Why did it switch like that? It's in reverse. How strange. That's kind of weird. Okay. Is it good for you? It's good for you, honey? Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do I start? Are we live now? Yes. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Yogi, heart advice from a practitioner to practitioner on the path. Let's start with a quick announcement. 2 classes coming up, April 10th at 12 noon, April 10th at 12 noon. These are Costa Rica times. April 10th at 12 noon and April 15th at 2 p.m. April 15th at 2 p.m. Costa Rica time. We'll be going into one of the first things that was sent in, one of the first topics that was sent in for questions to be discussed in the series of talks I'm doing since we're all house quarantined during this period. And this will be on the absolute and the relative. What is absolute? What is relative? How do we practice for the absolute? How do we practice for the relative? How do we integrate in our life? All those great questions. There was quite a few questions with about 18 or 20 likes on them. So we'll go with those for the first topic. It was the one that had the most interest. Okay. Before we start question and answer right now, let's start with one Om, wherever you are. This is Essential Guru Yoga, which means to bring your body, speech, and mind into instant recognition as much as possible of the naturally inherent self-perfected experience, and to relax into that, to abide in that, and open into that for the teaching. Everybody, deep breath in. Okay, wonderful. So we had some nice questions sent in. Let's get right to it and work with those. First one just came in. The last one just came in from Faisal. I'll do first because I want to kind of get it out of the way because we've been answering this a lot in threads over the past year. So Faisal asked a question about, in a nutshell, if a teacher is abusing a student, how can they be realized? Is it that they're realized they just haven't done the shadow work? How is that possible? So here's my take on it. Number one, the very most important thing to say is, and this is now outside the subjectivity of how you define abuse, let's say it's real abuse, whatever that means, real abuse, right? And to me, that's when the person wishes to cause harm to another person, or the person wishes to gain benefit from the other person at their expense, right? So in spiritual teacher terms, that would be abuse in my vocabulary. So if someone is realized, they cannot abuse somebody. That's just it in a nutshell. So Faisal was talking about rumors about Swami Satchidananda, and there was so much came out about that. I don't know if it's rumor or not. Like I said, I've never been there during that period of time, never knew him in that era. It's like 20 years later I met him, maybe more. And then I mentioned Swami Shivananda. I mean, Swami Shivananda is so far beyond reproach, I'm not even going to go there. That guy was a saint beyond saint. Abusing anybody, never. Everybody I knew who was a student of his directly had said they never even saw him be angry, ever, much less abuse somebody. So I can't imagine it. Even when somebody came and chopped an axe at him and hit him in the head with the axe, he didn't abuse the person. He didn't get angry. He didn't even get angry. He had the person tied up. He gave him a puja and fed that person offerings and gave him a lecture about the bad karma of hurting people and let him go. Didn't even take him to the police. So I think we'll drop Swami Shivananda from that discussion. There's some crazy people out there that just don't know where to stop with this whole witch burning kind of thing. Now, with Satchidananda, there's a much better case for that. He might have done some really crazy stuff. And anything that would have been done, like I said by the first definition, to actually intentionally harm somebody or to gratify oneself at the other's expense, I put into the category of abuse. Did he or didn't he? I don't know. So I'm going to leave out the personalities. That's for the judges to figure out and the sheriffs of the Dharma out there. For me, I want to know what I can do with it. Like Faisal's question, he wants to know what he can do with it as a Dharma practitioner, how he should position himself around it. I think he's trying to ask. Yeah, when you're out looking for a teacher, like I just gave that series of classes on picking a Dharma teacher, you want to definitely find out if they're an abuser or not. Here's how it works to me. The stages of 12-stage view dictate the level of conduct we should expect from any human being, okay? Any human being, teacher or not. So in stages 1 to 4, anything goes, pretty much. We can be abusive, we cannot be abusive, all the way to 4. Because you might have moments, right, where you fly into a rage or something like that. Forget about whatever you've been trying to cultivate as peace and tranquility and harmony. But in stage 5, when you really take up the Dharma and you've committed to a teacher and you've got initiation, all that kind of stuff in stage 5, then you really should know proper conduct. But there'll be a variable level of how able you are to adhere to that conduct. And like some things will be really easy and some things will be more difficult. It might be easy when someone cuts you off in traffic to not be angry. That's not where you get triggered. But it might be hard for you to pass up, it might be hard for you to not chastise somebody who asks a dumb Dharma question, something like that. Everybody has their area where the karmas trigger them more. But in stage 5, you know the proper conduct because you're aware of the teachings, you're aware of the precepts, the vows, probably taken vows. But you're not a self-realized being, you're not self-perfected, you're not a rainbow light body, so you're probably going to make mistakes. Okay. What's happened? Oh, the glasses are reflecting. So then in stage 7 to 9, we know the conduct that we should be doing. It's the same as 5. We have the vows and so forth. But here the big difference is we went through stage 6 and we became self-realized in stage 7. And once we realized our true nature, now it's going to be much harder. Well, I think at that point, if you're truly in 7, it's impossible to harm another person without taking yourself out of 7, without dropping lower. So that's the big distinction. A stage 7, 8, 9 being will not harm another being. They won't. On purpose or gratify themselves at the other's expense. Like I wouldn't go into the shops and buy something and go for a deal where I know I'm really hurting the shop owner. They're so desperate for cash, they're losing their profit just to get some cash flow to put food on the table for the day for their family. I wouldn't do that because it's not fair to them. It would be harming them. It's against my ethic, right? It's against our precepts. So, but the difference between the way we see the 12-stage view, one of the differences in the way Lu Ming saw the 12-stage view that he created for his school, is that in stage 7, 8, and 9, in our tradition, you can, and this was told to me orally, you can still fall. You can have a fall where you lose the view, and which seems, how can you do that? If you've realized your true nature, how can you do that? Well, it's a temporary thing. The how, I don't really know about how, because how is a question that is very difficult to answer for everybody. In other words, how is it that the universe is the base of essential goodness, and yet people who are the base can still perform evil acts and torture other people, torture animals? How? We don't know how. We just know the reality. We just know that that's what can happen. So it appears that someone can realize their true nature and still fall. That's stage 7. So it tells us about the nature of the realization at 7. It's not total, right? So at stage 7, it's at least a white bindu realization. Could be a red bindu realization, but it would be red or white or both, but it wouldn't be the blue. The blue bindu realization with the red and white bindu, the blue heart bindu, meaning, the summa cum laude, right, of everything, would be that it was a stage 10 revelation, a stage 10 experience. So before that, you have one of the bindus stabilized, but the other one's squirrely, something like that. And then so a person can fall. How, the exact mechanics of it, nobody knows, because this is not like science with mathematical measurements, okay? This is just something you have to see by the conduct. But a stage 7 being that falls is kind of rare. In my opinion, it's kind of rare. I kind of feel that when you see behavior of beings who are abusive, who are acting like they're coming from a higher stage, many teachers come to mind in the past 30, 40 years we found out. I think that they really never got stage 7 realization. from my way I understand the teachings. Because stage 7 is really quite something extraordinary. A lot of people, when I teach them 12-stage view, they're happy to share with me how they think they're in stage 7 or stage 8. And I'm like, do you realize how high stage 7 is? It's like very, very high. And my experience of people who are in stage 7 or above is that they couldn't fall, really. It would be very difficult. So most of the people, even though we have this way of teaching it in our system that says 7, 8, 9, you can still fall. So keep your vows of conduct. That's the key. You can still fall in 7, 8, or 9, so keep your vows of conduct. Then you won't. Okay, great. But when you meet a 7, 8 person, their intention is so pure. Their motive is so pure. You can just see it in their reactions to things. You can test them in many different ways, but they just won't react in a selfish way, So I don't think there's much likelihood of them falling, basically. That's a way to look at it through the stages, 7 through 9. Then stage 10, it's karma kshaya is the name of the stage, and there's a complete obliteration of the personal karma completely, totally. And it would be impossible for someone in stage 10, we call a mahasiddha, to actually harm somebody, in any way, shape, or form. The stories like this are stories like Babaji, the great mahasiddha, flying around the Himalayas with a band of American students, apparently, and maybe 1 or 2 British, and someone's following them and wants to be part of their group mountain, and Babaji would just take off with their troop to the next mountain by flying over there, teleport them. And he has to go up the next mountain. And this goes on for a very long time. Finally, Babaji lets him find him one time on top of the mountain after a very arduous climb. And Babaji says, what do you want? And he says, I want you to be my guru no matter what, beyond everything. I don't care about life itself. I just want you as my guru. Babaji says, what will you do if I don't take you as my student? He says, I'll just kill myself right now because life has no meaning whatsoever. And the guy says, and Babaji says, I don't want you as my student. The story goes that the guy ran for the cliff, jumped straight off, fell down 2,000-3,000 feet and smashed his head. And then Babaji, through his Mahasiddha ability, which is quite one with the universal power and agency of Supreme Shakti at that point, resurrects him and brings him back onto the top of the mountain in his body like he's normal, nothing happened. And actually, there's stories of people doing this on minor levels, a little bit lesser levels all the time. So maybe you can do it in stage 8 or 9 as well. So it may not be such a stretch for a stage 10 being to do this. Anyway, and he says, yeah, I was just testing you. The only way to know if you really would do it, because you said you would, is to let you do it. But you see, as a stage 10 being, he was able to take away the person's sadness over being rejected, take away the damage that was caused to himself by jumping off the cliff, and bring him back into a perfect condition beyond and above what he was before through the interaction. This is the symbology and the deeper meaning of the story, whether it actually occurred or not, because I wasn't there. It just comes down, I think, through Autobiography of a Yogi or one of those books from Yogananda's lineage. So you get the gist of it. The stage 10 being may look like they're causing you some kind of harm or distraction or something, but you're going to benefit from it for sure. And that benefit is going to be noticeable by everybody, not just you. So it won't be like controversial. Okay. So let's see. Hence the importance of adhering to precepts, I wrote, conduct vows, and the advice of your teachers on how to be in the world. In Dharma, we're looking for a harmony between the earth and the heavens. That was the whole Vedic religion. So Tantra just went from that and said, yes, we're trying to bring the heavens down into the earth and have total congruency, total harmony between the heavens and the earth. And we maintain that harmony through our conduct. I mean, one of the reasons why the ancients would say this pandemic happened was we lost our proper, appropriate conduct that comes out of being with your true nature. And because of that, like we go into jungles and rip out diseases like Ebola, and we eat animals that we shouldn't be eating from jungles and get corona, and so on and so on. That's just one of the myriad ways that we've lost our conduct, how we've destroyed the ecology, everything, fighting with each other with wars. So when we have conduct that expresses true harmony between heaven and earth, between what we know to be the highest ideal and the grounded implementation of that ideal in the world for the benefit of all beings, that conduct, that harmony, that's the best that we're looking for. All Dharma teachers should have that conduct. There's no question. And anybody who is abusing somebody is not realized for sure and should not be a Dharma teacher. Plain and simple. Okay. Lulu's question. Faisal, if that didn't suffice, you can send something. My wife will see it, and maybe I didn't get what you wanted to know, but that's it for me. So on that question for now. Lulu, you want to know about the enlightened deities, protectors, and regents from the refuge mandala and protection refuge mandala. What are these deities and so forth? Now, right now, I'm editing and refining the wording on the Shakshaya Foundation practice, which will now be called Trikamasa Yoga Foundation practice from now on, because I wrote it so long ago, and it was written in a one-shot take from an inspiration I had. You could say like a revelation almost, and I never really went back and reworked it very well to make it congruous and use the correct words and so on. So I'm taking out a lot of Sanskrit words because I've had a lot of feedback from students that they don't know what parampara is, they don't know what Shakti means, they don't, So I'm taking out most of the Sanskrit words. I'm taking out a lot of the deity names. I took out 34, 33, 32 tattvas because people are like, what is that? So it's not necessary to get the real meaning of the prayers. So I just changed some words that made it easier to understand and you get the feeling of it, and took out some things that were not important. And in the instructions, I also improved them as well quite a bit. And that should be finished by tonight and up by a day or two after that on the Facebook group for now and the website later. So in the practices, in practice 7, practice 8, Guru Yoga and Refuge Mandala and Dharma Hero and Hero, that kind of thing, we make this Refuge Mandala. So who are the deities in this Refuge Mandala? Well, okay, when we say enlightened deities, we mean, because there are gods and goddesses who are not enlightened, right? So when we say enlightened deities, we're talking about the standard, very well recognized enlightened deities. Ganesha, Saraswati. They've come down through the Indian Tantric Yoga tradition to the Mahasiddhas as being like the representations of the right channel and left channel. So we keep them in our practice, right? They've been esotericized to be understood as inner channels. But we still do the outer yoga level work with the chanting and pujas and things sometimes, right? So those are the enlightened beings. Saraswati, enlightened being, right? So all the great enlightened deities, Kali, Durga, Bhairava, you could name so many, Lakshmi and so on. These are all enlightened deities. In other words, they're not minor gods or goddesses. They're not out for their own benefit. They're not going to mess around with you. You still don't want to be possessed by them because that's not human realization in our path. There are a lot of people who want to be possessed by deities, enlightened deities as their path. That's fine. That gives them a leg up. It certainly changes their behavior from not so good to nice. And then maybe they can benefit beings when they're in that trance state of being in the deity's bhava, but that's not our path. We want enlightenment as a human being. So those are the enlightened deities. You'll also read about the pure emanation deities, deities of pure emanation. And the way I'm writing it now will be more self-explanatory for the practice. That is that when you're at the ultimate base, and as this, from the base, the energy of the base is arising spontaneously, manifesting this whole world, there's a liminal space between the base and those manifestations, and those deities are considered to be these pure emanations. They're kind of hovering in between. They're not quite the ultimate beyond all beyond. They're not in form yet. They're not doing anything yet. Just they're kind of this intermediary transition station, if I could be like that, call it like that. And those ones are in the 36 Tattva model, which we'll be doing in class in the future in one of these classes I'm giving. In the 36 Tattva model, they're like the 34th, 33rd, and 32nd Tattvas. So they're very, very high deities, we could say, aspects of the spontaneous, non-dual, and unformed energy of the base that makes the first movement into creation but hasn't come in yet. So it's kind of like the impulse energy and the ideation energy, and even the movement energy without duality being invoked yet. So those are those deities, okay? And then from those, below that comes out the enlightened deities we just named, who have a form and a function and mantras and all this kind of thing. So it's more like that, how we see it. And then you asked about the protectors of the regions of space and so on. So there are protector deities, dikpalas, protectors of the directions, dikpalas and directors, protectors of space and so on. These are like offices held by certain deities that are spontaneously manifested. So when all creation comes into being, right, from the nothing, the Big Bang, and it all comes into being, that's pretty much how it works in our world. Like physics said, it comes in like this, and everything is in their proper place, in the appropriate place. And the protector deities are in their appropriate places there as well. So they're not like core essential. So the mandala takes us from the inner place of Anuttara, or that which is beyond the beyond, or the base, Dharmakaya, all these names for it, pure space. And then boom, you get these liminal deities of the beginning expression of everything. And then boom, you get the enlightened deities and so forth. And then protectors, and let me see what else you had there asking there. Protected deities, teaching, yeah, okay. The protectors of the teachings are there as well. Okay, so that is basically what those beings are. So when you visualize that, you visualize above you this, cone of protecting energies that are emanating from the base on top of you and encompassing you and embracing you in there, right? Giving you that protection, that refuge. Okay? All right. Now, I don't know if the person wanted to be anonymous or not, so we'll leave out the name. Somebody's trying to make a choice of the 5 ways and is basically saying, okay, like when I go through the preliminaries, when I go through the foundation practices, when I do Trikamasa Yoga Level 1, all this when the website comes out in a few weeks, what do I do for my 5 ways? How do I pick them? This is a good question. Do I pick which of the 5 ways I'm going to follow based on my inborn aptitudes, my inherent aptitude, my capacity that I built up from doing work and so forth, my interest, my interest, my aptitude, my capacity, my competency? Or should I try to balance it out through antidoting, like supplementing with the opposite, And this is a question that, well, it's plagued a lot of teachers that try to give students help with practices, and it's really been difficult for students to answer for themselves over time too. And my practical experience from watching this for over 30 years now, well over 30 years, is it's much better for a person to go with their aptitude. Because when they get really, really deep into their natural groove through the practice, like meaning I'm more of a white bindu person, or more of a red bindu person, more of a blue bindu person, when they really do that deeply and they follow that way that lets them go into that deeply, then that one that they have the most natural talent for can be stabilized, realized, and stabilized the fastest. Awakened, realized, and stabilized the fastest. That sets up the ability for the other ones to start vibrating, and the other 2 bindus can get realized, and we can have full realization. What I've seen in the past was people trying to antidote, and build up their imbalances. And it's so alien to them that it just doesn't stick. It really, they work at it, it doesn't stick. And in the cases where I noticed where it did stick, it was because they had already worked on the path of least resistance, right? Already worked with what they're very good at. So if you came in as a great meditator, keep going, I'm not saying that you can be out of touch with reality. You can't be transcendentalist and bypassing the first, the red bindu, being in the world, the dynamic energy of pure enlightenment and expression of enlightenment as dynamism. No, you have to be in touch with that. But if you're more geared towards the spacious aspect of being rather than dynamic energy aspect of being, which are both co-equal, then go with the spacious aspect of being. Go into it deeply and establish it. Then, because you didn't bypass, because you still were in touch with your passions the whole time, then the passion practice will start to show a lot more fruit, because it kind of vibrating high at the white bindu starts the red one to go as well at a higher level. And vice versa. If you're a person who's very dynamic, you like to talk a lot, you like to write, you like to be engaged with people and doing a lot of practice of energy, it's pretty easy to pick out who's quiescent and who's energetic, right? If you can't see that in yourself, then you're having a problem right there at the basic level. So if you're the energetic kind of person, then I would go with the red bindu practices. I would take the way of fire. And if you're the white bindu, I'd go way of meditation. And if you're red bindu, I'd go maybe way of the warrior, see how that works for you. And then if you're red bindu or going towards a blue bindu, way of mirror consorts, same way of water is difficult to say, because it can be passionate in that devotion is a great passion. So way of water could be, I'm really, really deep into the white, deep into the red, kind of like the blue. I can't make up my mind. Way of water could work for you. But I think way of water could work now that I think about it in these terms, for a red Bindu predominant person or a white Bindu predominant person. It could really work either way. As long as you're doing those rituals and focusing on those rituals and deity yogas that are going to bring out the red or white Bindu. So way of water is more flexible. Okay? Okay. Hopefully that helps you understand that one. And Wenche from Norge. How's my accent, Wenche? Is it any good? I know, it's terrible, right? So she wants to know about Pratyahara. When does it happen? Is it in Shunya or not? And so forth. This is a really big question, actually. A very good question and a big one. Because many people come to the practice of Tantric Yoga, Mahasiddha Yoga, like our system, and they've been steeped in Patanjali's yoga. And then they've been taught that the Pratyaharas occur at a certain specific stage of the practice. It's very locked in, these stages of Raj Yoga, as far as Raj Yoga refers to Patanjali's yoga. Same term, Raj Yoga, can refer to direct realization Tantra. So this is where it can get confusing. And that's what the Hatha Yoga Pradipika is talking about. He's not trying in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Swami Swatmarama is not trying to marry, as some people have said, Kaula Tantra and Raja Yoga of Patanjali. No, he was not trying to do that. He was trying to marry Kaula Yoga and the physical energetic practices of Kaula Yoga with direct realization Tantra, which is quite different than Patanjali's. It's a non-dual system saying that everything's inherently perfect already, quite similar to Dzogchen. So back to the question at hand. Wenche wants to know, when does a Pratyahara come in? Well, it's not sequential in the way that Patanjali's is, where you have to do all this work first and then be able to absorb your mind, because if you don't before that, you'll be too distracted. It'll be too crazy in your mind. Your energy will be too disturbed to gain sense withdrawal, which is the definition of Pratyahara pretty much. To be able to withdraw in from the outer senses and attain quiescence inside, total inward trance state, right? What's significant about the difference between Patanjali's and Yoga Mahasiddha is that in Patanjali's, you have to achieve that by calming everything down first. In Tantra, we said that's too difficult. And indeed, I think it is too difficult. And I'm going to quote here my dear friend who died a little while ago, Georg Feuerstein, who is a great writer of yoga and Tantra, really good person. One time I said to him, he asked me what stage I thought I was operating at. And I said, what stage do you think you're operating at? And he said, oh, I'm not even above yamas and niyamas. I said, what? He said, yeah, I can't even control my anger yet. So I can't do anything else. I can't do Pratyahara. I was like, wow. And that's interesting. That was before he got deeper into Tantra and Dzogchen, before he died. So he probably changed his tune pretty big. Because the real Tantra and Mahasiddha type of path of Dzogchen and Taoism, we see sense withdrawal or Pratyahara, or better than sense withdrawal, called it not being attached to the senses, to the objects of the senses, not having the senses grab objects and distract us from a calm, clear mind, or later in the practice from our own essential nature. We see this happening organically, very naturally with the practice, not something that we have to make a special step where you withdraw all your senses and so forth. You can do that, and I recommend that for students that are very, very Vata deranged. Students that have a lot of wind element going erratic in their mind, in their body, and they find it very difficult to become calm. Their mind is very scattered, and they're lost in thinking all the time. They might benefit from it. But in general, I would go for the Tantric Yoga method of inducing Pratyahara through direct engagement with the dynamic energies of meditation. Excuse me. For example, I could instruct a person who has a scattered mind. This happened in Thailand a lot when Buddhists would come to me and say, I'm a Theravada Buddhist by nature in Thailand here. I'm not able to really effectively practice. I want to meditate. I go on the retreat with the monks. They say I stink because my mind is always distracted. I get so dejected and sad, I always, leave. So I think I'm a failed Buddhist. And I get sad for them, I said, well, let me try to teach you something. In fact, one of the people who I did this with was a manager of my property for many, many years, a great old guy. And he really wanted to go deep, but he couldn't because of this problem. And I asked him to explain his practice. It was classic Theravada Buddhism, a lot of Vipassana, Shamatha, and so on. But he couldn't do it because his mind was too busy. So I asked him, what is he really passionately involved in? What does he really like? You know, what kind of foods? Are you into like food? Are you into like entertainment? Are you into sex? Are you into sports? Like, what are you really into that has energy? Art, you know what? And then what he told me was he was into something that had dynamism, that had energy. And I said, okay, I'm going to tell you how to use that as your meditation. Very simple thing. So I set up a meditation where he was able to focus on that thing that holds his attention very easily. And as he focused his attention upon that thing which holds his attention very easily, then I cued him to subtly, he would do the work, I cued him verbally to subtly move his attention away from the object being an outer object and into the fact that it's already contained within his own universal Buddha nature, in his own essence within. And through the subtle cueing of bringing that back inside, it wasn't Pratyahara. It was recognizing the inner and outer as one and pre-existing on the inner plane, the source, and already fulfilled. Because this interest in the outer stuff is usually desire fulfillment, right? Even desire for activity and sports and stuff is still desire fulfillment. And the great tantric theory is that all desires are fulfilled upon arising within your own nature before it ever externalizes as a apparent object, so-called object. So this is the way I think we can really look at this Pratyahara question the best, Venke. And if you take the way of meditation with us, you'll see that that is basically in the retreats that we follow in the way of meditation. That's how we take people through those stages so that Pratyahara is naturally induced and not seen as an artificial stage that you have to try to induce by drawing back from everything, which I feel in my experience, I've seen in my own experience, other people's experience, creates transcendence, spiritual bypassing. You know, really you lose the earth. You lose your connection to reality in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't recommend that way. So this is the more natural way, tantric way, to absorb yourself naturally in something and let that then be recognized as already self-fulfilled within you and shift your awareness to being like that's an outer thing. So, and then you get that experience of Pratyahara, okay? Without spiritual bypassing, without the transcendence and all the rest of it. Okay. Good question, a very good question. And yeah, if we go through way of meditation and even Kundalini Hatha Yoga, it happens in Kundalini Hatha Yoga too, for sure. As you're doing the practices and the breathing, everything just actually just comes in so easy. You hold Kumbhaka and then Maha Kumbhaka after that, and you know you contain the whole universe within you. It's not a question anymore. It's not a theoretical, philosophical question anymore. You experience the universal experience in your own being, and you go, oh, looks like I don't need anything anymore. So it becomes natural. Okay. Second question from Venka on that. Second question, she had 4 questions. Let's see. How do we keep good spiritual hygiene? Well, that's what all of the conduct rules are all about, why we have the 21 precepts. The number one thing would be to research the 21 precepts. If you're in this school, in this system, I would read them every Sunday once. Won't take that long. Read them every Sunday once. Takes you about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then pick one for the week that you think you're weak at. And maybe print it out and blow it up into a whole A4 size, like a poster or something. You can put it on the wall in your office or, you know, on the wall at home in your kitchen while you're cooking, whatever. So you can keep reminding yourself. I used to do this stuff and keep it on the visor of my car. You know, I'd flip it down at a red light, do the practice, put it back up, pray the prayer or whatever. I'm just always saturating in it. That's the way to go. So that's one way that you can maintain spiritual hygiene. The other way to maintain spiritual hygiene is to do the very important thing of don't hang around with common people. This is what it says in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Don't hang around with common people. What do they mean by that? They mean people that are involved in samsara, deeply involved in samsara. I saw on the thread recently that people were talking about whether they liked the Tiger King series on Netflix, some video series about a lot of people that were really lost in samsara and very possessed by other realm beings and weird as hell. But people loved it and got really into it. I found it kind of boring and samsaric to the degree of why do I want to see this? You know, so basically, most people, if they're not into the Dharma or they're not a very good person, consciously aware of doing good and being good, are going to be at a lower level of vibration. And spiritual hygiene pretty much starts with the environments that we inhabit. Is our house set up to be a house of light, like a little temple? Beautiful. Do your friends also reflect the core virtues of the spiritual system you follow? And does their conduct contribute to humanity, to ecology? Or are they really kind of different, in that way? So that's the real spiritual hygiene. And that alone will keep us pure and clear and protected if we were just to do those two things, following precepts, vows, and keeping good company, basically. Let's just keep it at that for now. There's all kinds of things you can do, like opening and closing the mandala every day. That's extremely good for spiritual hygiene, but I'd like to keep it really simple for now and do the things that matter the most. Many times people start to take up the spiritual path, but they still have their old friends from the past. And they still go out and do drinking binges with them, or go on, vacations that are more about the jet skiing and getting drunk and, not really lifting their consciousness very much, that kind of stuff, doing old things you used to do and reliving memories, going back into Storylandia, reliving all the old memories and all the great times you had in high school or college or childhood or whatever. So, when you grow up spiritually, you mature as a Dharma person, and you have to move away from that. It's just the way it is. Because if you don't have a natural desire to move away from it, you kind of got to wonder what's going on in your practice, in your progress. I wouldn't do it prematurely, but if you notice that you're being held back, if you're having obstacles, then it might invoke a bit of a break from the lower vibrational activities that you get into, whatever they are, right? Binge watching of videos every night or whatever. Okay. What is Parashakti? What is its relation to the red bindu? You said something like, in the foundational practice, praying of higher chakra function, it says that when we abide with the red Shakti bindu, we should sense ourselves to be in that infinite expanse of the pure principle of dynamism. What is the pure principle of dynamism? Okay, so what is Parashakti and how does it relate to red bindu? The pure principle of spaciousness shows up in a being, spaciousness, equanimity, as the white bindu. The pure principle of dynamism shows up in a human being as the red bindu. These are the symbolic bindus of these two polar yet interdependent and actually one experience, right, within a human being. So what is Parashakti? Is that right? Yeah, what is Parashakti? How does it relate to the red bindu? So this Parashakti, or this Sambhogakaya, or this pure energy, is the pure energy that is constantly manifesting out of the base, right? Like the image on a mirror, we could say. So the mirror is there, that's the base, and it always has the capacity to reflect. And the capacity to reflect is the energy. The mirror is clear. The mirror is just clear and passive. The capacity to reflect is the energy itself. And then the reflections that come are how the energy moves into form. And those forms are temporary, because as soon as you take it away from the mirror, it all disappears. So the energy is the capacity of the mirror-like base essence of each being, sentient being, to host, to reflect these arisings. That's what Parashakti is, the most transcendent energy. Shiva is equal. Parashiva, Parashakti in Shaiva's terms, when we talk about it, it's like that. And you can see that in that highest level, the Parashakti is unmanifested, right? It's existing at a level beyond manifestation and unmanifestation. That's very important to understand. When energy is manifested, it's already, in Sanskrit terms, aparashakti. When it's transitional, it's paraparashakti. And when it's totally the source energy that hasn't manifested yet at all, come into any being, taken any direction yet, it has no directionality, you could say, that's Parashakti. The base essence of the red bindu is the Parashakti, like this, often represented by Ma Pranashakti or Paradevi, Ma Pranashakti. But Ma Pranashakti as a deity is quite interesting. We just worked with her over the last retreat with everybody here. She can represent the most transcendent of the energies, which hasn't manifested yet, as well as the most gross that has manifested. She spans it from Parashakti to Apara and everything in between. Okay, all right. And that's how it relates to the red bindu. So when we have realization of the red bindu, then we have the connection, the pure connection to the non-karmic or unconditioned dynamism of the universe, basically. Quite a high say, isn't it? It's quite a high say. Okay. The fourth question you had, Venka, do we attract people vibrationally, karmically with the same issue as us? And you were talking about negative issues of the self, like self-hatred or something like that. Will we attract people with the same kind of thing? And, it's esoteric in one sense, but it's also just straight up normal psychology if you think of it in another sense. If you're thinking a lot about a certain thing, you're going to attract people who are also thinking a lot about certain. In other words, you're going to notice those people more and they're going to notice you more. You're going to want to hang around with them more and they're going to want to hang around with you more simply by sheer interest, right? The sports fanatic finds the other sports fanatic. The person hooked on romance finds the other person hooked on romance. When they don't, it's tragic, right? So that's just a resonant thing. That's normal psychology, normal human social behavior, I think. I don't think we have to go too deep into karma to look for that. But you do open the door to another deeper level of karma where, when we really need to learn really, really deep things and we need to bring them out and the time is right, we're going to attract people into our lives who have the ability to bring those things out. And the onus is on us. It's up to us to be responsible about the awareness to catch this thing coming up. Otherwise, we find ourselves married, as happened in my case one time when I missed a karma, I got married, and I don't rationalize it saying I had these two beautiful children out of it, because I had two beautiful children out of it. I love these children. It's great. But the marriage was a mistake. And it was a mistake because there was a big karma come up to process and I didn't catch it yet, right? So it became a strong echo karma. So I think it works both ways. There's a social, psychological dynamic of this, and there's a deeper level. And when these really deep things come up, circumstances, people, situations come into our lives to bring it out. Maybe in a beautiful way, and you just accept it and surrender, and it's all beautiful. Or maybe in a horrific way, through challenge, strong challenge. But the thing is, we have to be responsible to be aware, to know ourselves deeply, whenever possible to choose like, oh, that's some deep karma, and let it go and not follow this thing. Because the vibration of ourself does, as it raises up, does attract to it situations and people that can bring it up to our awareness even more. But that doesn't mean that it's always going to be a good thing. It could be like very challenging, very bad, as well as it could be very good. But sometimes I think the challenging bad stuff is better because it's easier to recognize it was a mistake, easier to see your karma after that. The good stuff, you might not actually recognize it. You have to be like a Swami Shivananda to recognize it like that. There's a guy who had such little karma. It was incredible. Such little negative karma. It was just incredible. So he had, almost no negative circumstances in his life. And when he did encounter so-called negative circumstances, he greeted them with beauty, surrender, devotion, and love. So he never even saw them as very challenging, very bad. He never complained. You know what I mean? So this is how it works for the law of attraction in this way. You were asking if it's kind of new agey. Well, it is kind of new agey, but there's also a real basis to it as well. Okay. Elodie. Hello. What amount of daily practice should one do to seriously progress, practice or study? Okay. I think a person to progress. Now, the key to the question here is you said, what amount of daily practice should one do to seriously progress? And that's the key. I think one practice session a day doesn't help a person progress. I think 2 practice sessions a day and you can maintain and maybe make slight progress, very slight progress. I think 3 to 5 practice sessions is the best rule of thumb for if you really want to make progress. You do 3 to 5 practice sessions a day, but the length of those sessions depends on the sadhana. What type of spiritual practice are you doing? Maybe one of the sessions is an hour in the morning. Maybe another one is 25 minutes. Maybe another one is 20 minutes before dinner. Maybe another one is minutes before bed. That's 4 sessions a day. Fantastic. You're going to show progress. No question about it. But it depends, like what is the practice? That's what I'm saying. Some practices are 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Some practices are 3 hours. Some practices are 10 hours. So you just have to see what it is. But the general rule of thumb that from my personal experience, and this is what this is all about in Yoga to Yogi, 3 to 5 sessions a day if you want to make progress. Then you wrote in there study. I think one study session a day is good enough if you have the time. If you're really working a lot, it's more important to practice and study one session a week, I would say. Make that study session strong, not 30 minutes, give it a good hour or two really reading into a text or notes you have and studying. But I think practice should take the precedence there and studying should take second if you're out of time. This is to be combined with unbroken integration sadhana. This is the other big part. It's not enough to just do practices seated certain times of the day. If you're falling right back to unconsciousness, right back to no awareness in between, you won't show much progress. You won't show much progress at all. So there's so many keys to this. I often thought of writing a little book, maybe it'd be an ebook, maybe a real book, the essential keys to progress on the spiritual path. And there are so many of them. One of them is integration practice. No integration practice, you're not going to progress. It'll be so slight, you'll never notice. Then again, what ties all of that together on one of the most important essential keys to progress on the spiritual path is the proper bhava, the proper intention, the proper motive, pure 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 motive. You can say forever, pure motive. Without the proper motive, and without really understanding what that means and how to connect to that Parashakti, how to connect to that refined heavenly type of energy, we're not really ever going to grow. We spin around doing practices. Yeah, a lot of students do many practices for a very long time, sort of devoted in a way, very strongly devoted, but they didn't really have any level of self-recognition, which is how the stages of self-recognition bring more and more connection to the essence energies. The essence energies brought into the practice are what cause the quickening. And that's what is really the key to practice, progress. So yeah, all this has to be taken into consideration altogether. What's the importance of awakening in dreams in Trikamasa Yoga? Well, huge importance actually in Lodi. It's an advanced practice level. It's not something to guilt yourself about if you can't wake yourself up in your dreams yet. Have a dream, notice that you're dreaming, say, I'm going to wake up in my physical body, wake up, sit up in bed, and go back and enter back into that dream again, the exact same dream with lucidity. That's the ultimate dream yoga level that advanced practitioner needs to then have that feed into the waking practice and have that waking practice then feed back into the dream sleep practice so that you overcome death before you die. In a nutshell, this is what it's all about. So many systems I see today of tantric yoga, they didn't emphasize dream yoga at all. I think mostly because the Indian systems didn't pass it down to many students from the West. You didn't see many courses at all by people that were practicing yoga or Hindu-esque type of Tantra-esque things quite clearly until, I think honestly, until I started putting out publicly dream yoga courses, and I was teaching it quite a lot. And then I started to see people start to pick it up, start to want to teach it, like some Hindu Shaiva teachers now are running institutions or have systems of teaching. And then what they do is they haven't learned it themselves. So they bring in other people who learned dream yoga from Tibetans or something. They bring it in to teach because everybody's recognizing it's a very essential, very crucial part of the practice. And full liberation before you die is extremely difficult without dream yoga attainment. Yeah. We teach it every year. We'll have it on this year again if the travel bans are lifted in time and so on from this pandemic. How important is it to develop Kombucha or Kombuchas? Okay. Correct Kombucha is essential for the way of fire, not for the other practitioners. And correct Kombucha forms the first half of the way of fire. The transitional area is Maha Kombucha, which is way bigger than Kombucha. And then after that, you use the foundation of Maha Kombucha and what it opens up in you as a fuel tank and a motor to expand and enhance the higher levels, the advanced levels of the practice. Okay. So the Kombuchas are essential. So how important to develop? Well, if you're taking away a fire, which is Kundalini Hatha Yoga, it's extremely important, right? Okay. How to find a Dharma buddy with the same aspirations. I hope you're referring to the Dharma partners I was talking about in the other lecture. How to find a Dharma partner or Dharma buddy with the same aspirations. For example, to start the online level 1 training. I don't know. I have no idea how you go about finding somebody who has this. You put an ad in Craigslist, or what is used these days online for ads? I don't know. No idea. I really can't help you there. So sorry about that. So let's let that one go. And Joanna had a question. Joanna's in our studio audience today in Costa Rica. Can I have more insight on the importance of maintaining daily rhythm of life and suggestion on how can a Vata type person or people keep a regular practice rhythm without feeling bored? Yeah, make it fun, make it interesting. So, in the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Vata is most easily and best handled and managed by scheduling, by keeping a scheduled energy, not allowing your energy to be erratic, not allowing the wind to run crazy. So scheduling. Now, there's going to be a lot of resistance to scheduling because Vata people that have a Vata derangement, a wind element derangement, usually have things a little out of control. And they usually like things a little scattered. It feels exciting. And I think this is the nature of Joanna's question, could very well be the nature of it, because when we do something scheduled, we feel right away it's commitment. Oh, commitment. That right away is scary. And then we think doing the same thing every day, that's boring. My first guru said to me, you want to know about celibacy. Like if you want to conquer desires, he said, just have the same meal 3 times a day for the rest of your life. And I went home and contemplated, back to my hut I was staying in, contemplated 3 times a day the same meal for the rest of my life. And I went into a panic, thinking just how that commitment was such an amazing thing. Forget about whether you're getting all the nutrition you need or not. That's just all buffering. Deal with the panic, the sheer panic that comes up when you contemplate having. Doesn't even matter if it's your favorite meal. It won't be after a while, right? I had sheer panic. I had claustrophobia. And I thought, wow, that just shows how I'm afraid to make a commitment. And I looked at it further, deeper, and it just showed how my Vata was out of control, my wind element. Looked at it deeper and showed how Rajas was predominating, an even deeper quality that disturbs the spiritual essence of mind and energy, Rajas, right? And I was like, wow. So down below all this, so you can handle it with scheduling and commitment, but it may feel scary, terrifying. It may feel boring. To me, boring is another kind of terrifying. Boring is claustrophobia of being limited, bound, committed. And you have to go through that if you're going to have any kind of spiritual development. So you got to just bite the pill and do it. Now, maybe the way to do it, scheduling, is schedule the first half of your day only. In the beginning, I would suggest this. Schedule the first 5 hours of your day and don't schedule the rest. But do stick to that first 5 hours like religious, because this will give you a sense of how nice and orderly your energy can be. And you still don't feel like you're completely committed and going to prison, the prison of claustrophobia, of commitment. And then, you act out the rest of the day, whatever you do. But keeping the half a day scheduled and the other half open will begin to start to set a kind of rhythm in your body, in your energy. The wind will start to become harmonized. And the natural wisdom will come back little by little. And then you'll want to schedule even the rest of the day. But here's the thing. Don't make the schedule locked down. This is what people do when they try to take care of Vata. And oftentimes it makes a real problem. Don't schedule out every minute of the day like solid rock. It's impossible to keep that schedule. That'll create more wind and more frustration. Schedule major chunks of it. Know that there's going to be some hours where things will go off the rails. My wife and I made a schedule recently, right? And we left out a 2 or 3 hours, you remember? 2 hours. A 2 hour chunk. We left a 2 hour chunk in the middle of the day, every day, just saying, well, who knows what's going to happen. And we scheduled all around it, 4 hours before, 4 hours after. That's enough. And left open kind of a little time before bed as well. So a little bit of flexibility there, because we're in a time right now of a lot of productivity, writing a lot for the website, filming a lot for the website, editing a lot for the website to get this out for you guys. So you have some good training that you can do, not just these free classes ad hoc here and there. So in that productive time, we have to really schedule and make best use of all of our energy and our time, therefore scheduling, right? So everybody makes use of schedule when you want to reel in that wind, but especially for your mental, emotional, physical health, you should do it too. Let's see. There was a question from Lewis. Is entering the stream September 21st to September 27th, 2020 in Costa Rica still happening? Right now, you'd want to consider all of the retreats that we're going to put up on the event calendar to be tentative. We're pushing them forward right now. We try to keep them 6 months to 9 months forward, at least, let's say. And then we're waiting to see, because with the pandemic, it may be that Costa Rica is safe, but it may be that Costa Rica is not trusting the United States, which might still be out of control in 2 months or 3 months or something. And they won't let people in from the States. So we have to wait and see. Each country is handling its own epidemic on a certain scale, certain speed. And then the whole world has to come together on it. And the only way we're going to really be safe about traveling around again will be when we get a vaccine, probably, or understand it better some other way. So for now, everything being scheduled, when we put it up there, we fully intend to do it, but everything's tentative based on the country we're in or where the training is supposed to be held, and whether other countries have sorted out enough and there's still travel bans between those countries. So that's about it, right? How about Maria's Agnihotra? So Parashakti, Maria, hello. Can I give a format for Homa Agnihotra? I can, but I mean, that's like a 1 hour thing, at least. I used to do the simple Agnihotra training in it for a whole day. So it'd be like a 7 hour class. So I wouldn't want to do, this is one of those things I wouldn't want to do on the internet, but I'm sure you'll find tantric teachers who will. So maybe you go look on YouTube or something, but it breaks my ethic. I think this is something that takes a deeper type of transmission, more instruction, and I think should be happening person to person. So the way of water will be covering that for sure. But remember, we're going to have basic puja for everybody who's listening, basic ritual, basic offerings, the 5 offerings up, or our version of the 5 offerings up on the way of water when the website comes up, soon after it comes up. We still have to film that one. We didn't do it yet, but we plan to make that one available too. Yeah, okay. And Sukalia handed me this one from Kendra. Kendra, up in the snowy white north, quite amazing. You still have snow up there, April 1st, 4th, whatever it is. Anger. Thank you for Trika Psychology Zoom the other day, working with that and the tools from Reclaiming Sacred Passion Retreat. I've avoided anger all my life, and oh, wow, it's alive in me now. So what Kendra is saying is that she's been working with the Red Bindu practices that we did in the Reclaiming Sacred Passion course recently, which we're now calling Awakening the Red Bindu, because it may conceptualize the content and the goal of the retreat better than Reclaiming Sacred Passion. So she came to the Reclaiming, the Awakening the Red Bindu retreat, and she's alive with anger now. Get hot and sweaty in my torso, center gets rumbly, and sometimes I'll start shaking mildly. If I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, could I be pendulum swinging from 1 to 8? 1 to an 8. So each side, you mean like doing 2 wings or something? Could I be awakening out of the dullness of the animal realm? This is the better question. So the animal realm, well, there's a little bit more there. Do you need it back? The animal realm very much has to do with awakening power and fire, and anger is one of the great awakenings out of the animal realm. And a lot of Enneagram 9 people do animal realm quite a bit, right? It's quite common. If we had a transcendental attitude towards life, or if we had a really encased way of doing life, like transcendental way, I'm up in the God realm, no anger there because it's not nice. But if I'm way down in the animal realm, if I'm way down in the lower realms, demon realm, something, I'm encased. I've encased my energy of the Red Bindu, and I'm not really in touch with it. I'm not really in touch with it. Animal realm, I'm not in touch with it at all, but I'm not transcendental either. It's that the anger's gotten squished down and so forth with all the rest of the passions. So then, yes, if you feel anger coming up a lot in this situation, after working with the Red Bindu a lot, after discovering many ways that you weren't in your body with breathing and breathing down into your pelvis and your yoni, and working on the exercises we use of projecting sound and the frigate walk and the flying and the breathing, all this stuff, and you feel like this is starting to uncork and you're getting angry, I would take this as a good sign. Things are starting to move. Now, what we have to cultivate simultaneously with the line. Now it looks like we're back again. So I might have gone offline for a second. Is it still recording? Okay. So we have to take responsibility. If the red bindu wakes up and we're all of a sudden lustful, we have to take responsibility for that, not try to throw our lust all over everybody. If our red bindu wakes up and all of a sudden we're very angry, we have to also take responsibility for anger and don't throw that all over everybody. And this is, the rub. This is the difficult part, because we have to be able to feel that anger to wake out of the stupor of ignorance that the animal realm and shutting down of Manipura chakra and central channel represents. So, what's the question part of that again? Is that happening? That's probably happening. Yeah. If the root of all emotion is fear, could I be avoiding fear? Okay. So I would deal with the anger first, just as it is. Don't go right to the fear. That fear is so low, so deep within us. It's right after pure enlightenment on the highest level. It's right when the energy of the universe itself comes into diversity. The fear is right there. So getting at that when we're just waking up is not usual, nor is it really advised, because it's too difficult to get at. It's just nebulous and what? I let yourself deal with the anger till it becomes clarity. The transformative aspect of anger is clarity. It makes things really clear to us. And then we don't have to be judgmental in a mean way, or be mean or harsh or violent or aggressive or anything. So work with the anger as anger first. Do it with emotional transformation the way I did in the class from Rica Psychology the other day online with Susie Darren. And also do the things you're doing, like your jujitsu and all the other ways that you can learn how to be in your body while these kind of energies are manifesting. That's the great thing about the warrior arts. You can be in your body and not be angry. When you watch modern sport fighting, boxing, MMA, even some of these jujitsu tournaments and so forth that you see, or wrestling tournaments on TV, this is not really warriorship. I mean, you may have a warrior or two in there, but I don't see many, because you see anger. You see people chasing passion. That's usually when they lose, right? Sometimes they win because they get more power and they knock someone out or something when they get angry. But this is not warriorship. The goal in warriorship is not actually to win, it's to cultivate yourself. And if you cultivate yourself well, there's a good chance you'll win a lot, but the goal still is not winning. It's life or death, warriorship. So if you lose, meaning you die, you want to make sure you're cultivated. If you lose in a sport, you get a loss on your record, one more in the loss column. So when you go into your jiu-jitsu practice or your wrestling practice or your stav or anything else you're doing that's warrior-like, make sure you're staying in that place of self-cultivation, learning how to be in extremely violent situations or chaotic situations, you could call it. It's it's not choreographed. It's happening free and wild, like sparring, right? So why sparring is so amazing. And learning how to be in those situations and not become reactive with anger, especially as a warrior. This is what that's all about. So keep that, but do all the inner work of transforming the anger to clarity as much as possible simultaneously. Then you have the physical way to keep it moving, because you got to keep it moving physically. That really is important, to keep that anger coming up, that energy moving. But then you have a way to move it into clarity through both warriorship and the inner esoteric practices. Okay.
Crystal has a two-part question.
Okay.
What does the way of fire look like in the stage 1, 2, 3 zone? Can it be dance, romantic love, etc.?
What does way of fire look like in stage 1, 2, and 3? Can it be dance, romance, etc.? Here, way of fire, the way I'm using this term specifically, Crystal, and anyone else who's interested in the way of fire, is specifically the way of Kundalini Hatha Yoga. Specifically Kundalini Hatha Yoga. So although romantic love and dance can be dynamic and have energy moving, they would not directly feed into my Kundalini awakening and sustained Kundalini development, in other words, my enlightenment, unless I were to put them through a lens of that, a path of that. And, for romantic love might be the word for it, but for Eros, it's mirror consort path. That is, from A to Z, the Kundalini path of relationship, okay? But it wouldn't be the way of fire. It's the way of mirror consorts. Way of fire is the technical, the theoretical, and very technical path developed by our ancestors who really hold this incredible knowledge of Kundalini Hatha Yoga and how to develop that and use that incredible energy of the red bindu to come into the actual practices to interiorize and esotericize these more gross energies. So when you look at romantic love or dance, or was anything else mentioned, warriorship, anything like that, those are outer activities, right? But we want to take that energy and bring it inside in the path of Kundalini Hatha Yoga. So I wouldn't say that those are part of it. I would say those are things you can do in stages 2 and 3 and 4 to keep the energy moving, you know. But I think by the time you're in stage 3, you could start to do the levels of Kundalini Hatha Yoga with earnest, trying to transform your energy very slowly and looking at yourself. I don't think you have to wait till stage 5 for that. The stage 5 aspects of Kundalini Hatha Yoga are the higher aspects, like Kombucha, the deity yoga and sexual sadhana that goes with Kombucha. That's the higher stage practices of the way of fire. But certainly all of the stages leading up to it, the preparatory phases, the Kumbhaka right before Kumbhaka, they can be done in stages 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's how I'd see it, okay?
This question's from Naomi. What are the after-death outcomes of beings passing from the body before stage 10?
What are the after-death outcomes of beings passing from the body before stage 10? Okay, good question, Manonmani. That's it. So the first part of that one. So Manonmani, what happens to us basically if we're not in stage 10 and we die? That's what you're saying, right? Yeah. What are the possible outcomes? Well, we can, depending what stage we are, we can be fixated in a mental, emotional realm of our own creation. That's one thing. And when the karma of that mental, emotional realm runs out, we will then take a birth into the next path of least resistance. So in other words, if I'm spending my life as let's say I was watching a business person the other day, a business person who's ruthless and really dangerous and violent, but all they care about is their own money and their own profit and their own power, kind of like a cartel person or something. I'm maybe a hyperbolic example, but if I'm going at business like that, and that's what I do all day long, right? Then there's a very good chance when I die, that groove that's been set up in my consciousness and my energy, it's going to be hard to shake that. That's going to manifest. In other words, you can test it for yourself when you go to meditate on non-conceptual meditation. What comes up? So you're supposed to be sitting there in non-conceptual meditation, but of course, concepts are coming like crazy until you get very deep into it over the years. And then what is coming? What is the content of it? Is it like uncontrollable sexual content? Is it rock and roll songs from the 70s? Is it business problems? Is it fears about your financial situation in your house? Is it longing for the best relationship? All this kind of stuff. Scenes from movies, entertainment, So we can see a lot of times when we're in a quiet space, what arises and the quality of that, and that will dictate our destination, basically. Like in Bun, they call the 6 realms the 6 destinations. So based on what arises, we may take a destination that we don't really treasure, but we didn't do the work in our lifetime to get rid of the, what can you say? Constantly arising pressure of karmas within us into our mind energy scape. So, that's what sadhana is all about on one level. We want to express our enlightenment, our inherent enlightenment, right? But to do that, first we have to quell a lot of karma on the relative level. That's the class we'll be having coming up the next 2 classes, April 10 and 15, I think it was. So that's one destination. We can come out with that. We can also come out with the destination of we're pretty clear. We don't have this kind of pressure, karmic pressure of the 6 realms, 6 destinations, and we're kind of opening into something deeper. We've become saturated with the Dharma through our entire lives. And now we go into a realm, a vibratory, resonant experience of compassion and wisdom, some level of non-dual compassion and wisdom. And even that has levels, like Stairway to Heaven. So you hear about the Siddha realms, or you hear about like the realm of the realized yogins, or translators below that. Yogins and translators. Then you hear about the realized yogins, and you hear about the siddhas, and you hear about the dakas, dakinis, and then you hear about the mahasiddhas, and then you like these levels. So the mahasiddhas is being the highest level there, and the rainbow body Buddha is at the very highest level. So, those are the other better destinations we can get to, and we get there by working our sadhana through our whole life. The problem is that people are very short-sighted these days. They can't understand that when you die, there's a destination, and they don't want to believe it. They think it's like old religion, old Jewish Christian stuff. I'm going to go to hell. I don't want to hear this anymore. But it's not. It's very natural. I mean, in one time in my life, I was hanging out with a lot of very bad biker gang guys, the pagans in Long Island, mostly because I rode Harleys, and the guy who fixed my Harleys rode with the pagans, and I rode with him. So we were often together with the pagans. Now, these pagans are not nice people. Each one of them gets in there by killing somebody. It's like the Hells Angels. So whatever. But I was riding and hanging out, and because I enjoyed motorcycles, I enjoyed long trips, male camaraderie. I didn't dig racism. I didn't dig sexism, but I just avoided that part of it. And I was enough of a man to be able to call it out for what it was, even if it got me in a bit of a fisticuff at the time. That was fine. I enjoyed that rough kind of lifestyle for a while. But what I'm getting at here is that those guys and gals are generating certain thoughts all day long. That's their whole lifestyle. They don't even use banks. They put all the money under their mattress in their backyard buried. It's amazing culture. It's very strange. But they're paranoid about the government. They're paranoid about everything, and they're into all kinds of illegal activities. And so if you're generating that your whole life, when you go, that's just naturally going to manifest. I find it hard that people don't contemplate this about their death. And what I'm trying to make the parallel to life is saying that when that person's walking down the street, they're seeing the things that come from their projected world, their projected world, right? Their psychological projection. They're seeing the places that they can take advantage of people to make money. They're seeing the criminal behavior, the criminal elements. They're not seeing the beauty, not seeing the beauty everywhere, the Dharma stuff. That goes right by, Well, when you die, why would it be any different? When you go to sleep, why would it be any different? Your base comes out when you sleep as well. If you're still having really violent dreams, my dreams are boring in that one way. They're 95, 99% teaching dreams. I'm constantly with a master receiving something so I can, perfect it for myself and then share it. Or I'm in a environment of teaching, helping people, serving people this way. Or I'm practicing on retreat with Sukalia and I up in the mountains in some mystic place, But those are my dreams, because that's the content of my integration practice all day long, and my seated practice, and I live in a shrine of our making on purpose. So really think about it like that. That's important. So there's the 6 destinations. There's the more subtle, beautiful realms that you can go to. And that covers most of it. But there's one more way that we can manifest afterwards. And that is, or another way, we could manifest back here in the human realm. That's a human birth, but that's part of the 6 destinations. That's fine. And that human birth can be higher or lower, but that's included in what I said before, the 6 destinations. But there's another one. It's said in the deeper yoga tradition that if we die deeply entrenched and attached to stage 7, deeply into the spaciousness of our being, and we don't want to be disturbed anymore about the energy, the dynamism. It's like we want to do a red bindu-ectomy, just get rid of the red bindu. If we die in that place, which is often very natural for the first year or 2 or 3, you enter into stage 7, because it feels like, oh, thank God, no more of this crazy red bindu stuff driving me crazy, right? So if I go into that white bindu-ish stage 7, shunya, spaciousness, emptiness, non-permanent anything space, it can feel so beautiful and so still. Why do anything? It's like, oh, it's like a white out, homogenized experience of bliss. Well, if I die like that, I might have trouble, because projecting that is a karma of non-wavering experience. So it's very hard to wake up out of that. You might project yourself into, well, you might not have any kind of body, even an astral body, even any kind of form body of a dream body. You might just be a kind of pure consciousness in a white cloud of pure consciousness for a very long time until that karma runs out, because there's no activity there There's not a karma to run off. It's difficult to run off, see? It's often said in our tradition that a great rishi or great mahasiddha has to look down into the depth of the deepest hells to pull a person out of hell, and also to pull a shunyavadin, a person who's stuck in shunya, a meditator, out of shunya. So for that reason, we never want to totally like eschew the world and its dynamism and involvement with the world. That's why hermits are not monastery sannyasins. We don't have a tradition of sannyas. We have a tradition of householder or hermit. What's the difference between hermit and a monk or a nun, a sannyasin? A hermit is still very engaged with the world in that they're farming, they're growing their food, they're cooking their food. Monks and nuns don't grow their food. They get it from locals. Monks and nuns are by vows not allowed to do work, which is really weird, right? So the hermits are growing their food. The hermits are engaged with life cycles. I mean, if you're growing your food, you got to know the moon cycle. You got to know the seasons. You got to be richly engaged with all kinds of things. You're cooking for yourself. You're building your huts. You might be hunting if you're a meat eater or fishing or something. And you're also exploring your complete relationship to nature through stages 8 and 9. So it's not like you're drawing back. Therefore, you can't get stuck in stage 7. So it's very important that once we're in 7, we pretty quickly, once we've stabilized 7, we allow 8 to come in and don't reject it and keep moving. Okay, those are some destinations.
You might have answered it, but the second part was, what strategies can a practitioner take to set up a good death before stage 7?
The strategies, if you're not in stage 7 and you're going to die before 7, I think the general strategy is you want to recondition your mind as much as possible before you go. And that would be immediately praying, immediately heartfelt prayer, turning the light, turning your mind, your heart mind completely towards the Dharma, not allowing, using vigilance and discipline at this point to not allow in discursive thoughts, negative thoughts, tamasic energies, tamasic behaviors that you would have normally allowed in before you weren't thinking, well, I'm not going to die in 5 years, so I'll work this out more slowly. I think we should immediately turn towards the light. Immediately start to remember as integration practice all day long that I am in a lineage of realized masters, that they are here to support me, and that I want to feel their presence with me at all times. And I want to act in the way they would act at all times. Would I feel embarrassed about doing this if all the lineage master mahasiddhas were with me right now? Then don't do it. And then keep your mind and heart turned towards those realms, towards the love of those beings, and work it. Now, in an imminent death, that becomes very important to focus on very powerfully. If you're talking just in general, and a person may think, I don't think I really have potential for stage 7 in this lifetime, I've assessed myself, it's pretty much still the same advice, because ripening of the mind stream, when you ripen your mind stream, as it's called, through the prayers, through the basic practices of the preliminaries and foundation, and through integration practice of holding second attention and surrounding yourself in a good spiritual environment, you actually transform and you create the potential for stage 7. And even if you thought you didn't have the potential, that's just a thought you shouldn't hold as well. You let that go and you open. Now, if it's a case of, I have so many worldly obligations, I'm not going to be able to practice enough to get 7. It may not be true. It may happen that you're able to get it through integration with the world, but it may be true because it may be hard without doing more seated practice. But in that case, you do the same thing. You stay with integration practice. Every time your mind's not needed to calculate figures or to make a verbal presentation or something like this to your colleagues or sales pitch or something a person would, or, make food for the kids or whatever, or even if you're making food for the kids, whatever, you can internally in your mind run through the prayers. You can sing the songs of realization of the Mahasiddhas. You can memorize them. You can read. You can, just keep suffusing yourself with this. And then keeping a second attention is so crucial, because as a stage 5 or less person dies, it's when we go unconscious and when we don't recognize our true nature in that clear light, or when we come out of that into the dream of the after-death state that we don't realize we're in that. Like, what was that movie called? Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis, when he didn't know he was dead. That's a really scary movie. When I saw that, I was like shaken to the bone because I knew the Dharma teachings. And that actually is not about this guy just being unaware, haha, he died. That's what happens to everybody when they come out and they're unaware. that they died. You wake up out of it and you don't realize you died. You're just in your new world of creation, unless you've developed an unbroken adhering to your own innate awareness through your lifetime before you die. Because then even if you missed a clear light after you die, when all the things start arising, Ronald McDonald and Walt Disney and your first marriage, and you'll still be going like, that's just a dream. I'm in my awareness. That's just a dream. So even though you haven't recognized yourself as your true nature yet, you still recognize that you're in a state of awareness, and these things are not you. And then the story that's trying to be created for you right now all around you, being projected outward, will just disappear. And you'll move into your next incarnation. And most likely, because you were sentient, you were awake and aware and self-reflective in that moment, you can turn your mind towards the Dharma in that moment again. This is just a dream. Dakas, Dakinis, whatever image you maybe focused on your whole life or whatever. And then you'll be moving more toward that expression in the next incarnation, in the next destiny you head into. Okay.
I'm going to get to a second question because it's a good one from what you just said. Crystal asked, what do you recommend for integration practice when we are working mentally on the computer all day?
What do you recommend for integration practice when you're working on a computer all day? Probably a second attention on your breath, rotating with a second attention of something about your body. So like when I ride in the car, I use a wood dowel with a towel wrapped around it real tight, so it's about this fat. And I put that in my upper back around T11, T12. So that the proper curve is transmitted into my lower back, so that when I drive these long drives to San Jose for 4 hours, I don't end up getting a C-shaped lumbar curve and push my disc out the back and cause myself back problem and stiffness. So in the same way, you could use some kind of device like that. Maybe you make a Velcro or elastic belt that can slip around you that has a tennis ball, maybe a soft tennis ball, not even full. And you sit on a chair, right? And you slide that tennis ball to one level, and that's pushing into you. So as you're typing everything, you keep a subtle awareness of the sensation. That's it. And then it gets numb for a while, dull. And after 2, 3, 4 minutes, you just move it a fraction to the right, and you go again. After 10, 15 minutes, you forgot about it. So you move it up a little bit, and you move it down a little bit. So that's a trick you can use, like I used to use with the loose pebble in my shoe. When I didn't wear socks and I had loose shoes, and I would walk, every time I took a step, the rock would tumble, the pebble would tumble to a new place. I would step on it. It'd be a new sensation with every single step. These are ways that we can keep aware, even though it sounds like so basic. It's not dharmic per se. It's not a mantra. It's not a deity visualization, but that doesn't matter, because if you can just stay aware, that's the key. You fight for your awareness if you have a job that is kind of mind numbing in that way. Mind distracting, completely absorbing of your mind. So another way to do it would be to stay with your breath. So first I would try that. Then I would try the breath. So first you tried something in your body where you could sit against it. Maybe it's under your leg as well. Maybe that's easier, under your thigh, and switch it from thigh to thigh. But then I would quickly move to the breath after that, and breathing into the lower belly while you're typing, while you're thinking, as a second attention. And if you can get that, then you might be able to, it's quite a thing to do unbroken while you're working, but if you can get that, then you may be able to go into more subtle levels of working second attention while you're actually working. Now, I did this in a very, very strong way from the years about 1993 to 1997. For those 4 years, I did it in a very strong way. We had a company, as well as my healing practice, what do you want to call it, health center, where people came to get health therapies. And we had a company, and that company was into sales, and I would put on huge sales meetings in the Hilton Hotel down in Sydney, Australia at the time. And there'd be anywhere from 100 to 200 people in the audience, sometimes more if it was a bonus night, you know. And I'd be doing a sales pitch, sales presentation. And we had a team, and I trained that team. My wife and I trained the team, trained ourselves, and we rehearsed and we practiced. And I thought the only way that I'm ever going to do this business isn't for the money alone. It's got to have some Dharma value. So I'm going to do it as a second attention practice. So I eventually built up the ability to do like a 45-minute presentation with myself on a board in a very expensive suit and tie and shoes in the Hilton, in one of the big, beautiful conference rooms in front of all these people, under the lights, the whole thing being recorded without a flaw in a total state of second attention. And I did it the same way I'm describing. Something in my shoe, my breath, position of my body. And then eventually I went into trying the hardest of them all, was to do it while I was performing a mantra. And here it was a bija mantra at first because it was simple. And then later on I tried it with larger shloka mantras. And that was really hard, I can't say I ever perfected that level, but because every now and then I would get stumped, I would stop and have to think of where I was in the presentation or reinitiate the mantra and I have to stop. But it wasn't long and I'd start up again the presentation and get back on the board, but I'd have it going again. But to do it seamlessly is amazing for 45 minutes to an hour, because mantra is a type of language. And if you're trying to speak and do a sales pitch while you're doing another language thing in your mind, it's like, whoa, really crazy making in the beginning. So start with the basics. But I'm telling you that story, not to get you to try mantra while you're typing, because that's going to mess up your typing, but to tell you that it's pretty amazing what we can do. It's pretty amazing how awake we can stay, like through dreams, like right through death, like right through sleep or death. So start slow, start with the body-based awareness while you're typing. I think that'll be good.
Kaleshwar asks, how can we best use this time of isolation and withdrawal from our regular activities for retreat and realignment with our nadi? That's the first part.
How can we best use these times of withdrawal?
This time of isolation and withdrawal.
To do what?
For retreat and realignment with our nadi.
I think whatever practice you're using at that time when you're in retreat mode, because it's forced on you by the government saying you can't go out, you're quarantined. I think you just do whatever practice you wish to put time into. Maybe you haven't had time to do more of a retreat style practice. You've been putting off that practice. Maybe it was like a mantra anustanam. You want to try one for 7 days without break. Every moment you're awake. You could never do that, dealing with family and kids and work and, social things. So maybe that's time to try that. Whatever you think, but just use the time wisely and get some more practice than you normally would.
The second part is, what do you recommend from Ayurveda for self-care?
During this special time or in general? That's quite a general question. So I'd have to say you have to buy a book for that. That's quite a big open question. And we go through that on Rica method videos and different things like that. Maybe you're trying to play cheeky and trigger me into giving people more self-care things they can do at home while they're quarantined, but that's not really yogi to yogi territory right now. So you can go online and there's so many people that are serving right now, putting stuff out about different type of Ayurvedic routines you can do at home right now. And I see lots of people doing home fitness routines because they don't have the classes that they usually teach in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, martial arts, or at the gym, aerobics, whatever. So I see that kind of happening. People are just doing it for free from home. Anyway, you can find a lot of stuff online. Dinacharya, or a daily activity schedule for yourself, lifestyle recommendations, should be tailored to Vata, Pitta, or Kapha doshas in our constitution and our present state of imbalance. So I don't want to pigeonhole it with anything really big or anything really specific, sorry. So just go and research it on your own, okay?
Peter asks, we were inspired by your classes on how to pick a teacher, but it left me wondering what to do when you can't find a teacher that ticks all the boxes.
Peter said, if you didn't hear that, we were inspired by the classes for how to pick a teacher. It left me a little bit what to do when I can't tick off all the boxes. You tick as many boxes as you can, Peter. And I think the main ones I listed the ones that were the main ones and talked about those for sure. You want somebody who really has attainment through the practices they're going to teach you, who really has the conduct that you wish to find in yourself as well, the conduct that presents wisdom and compassion as much as possible in body, speech, and mind every moment. And the person who came from a real tradition, who didn't make it up, especially if they had great teachers and they were authorized by those teachers, you tick the big boxes. And then what are you going to do about the little ones? You do the best you can. I often find it interesting with today, I'm not saying this is you, Peter, but in general, I often find it interesting today that people let themselves be held back in neutral. It's like they put the car in neutral. They can't find a teacher. They can't find a teacher because no one's measuring up to perfection. Well, wake up and smell the coffee. This is the human realm. Perfection is going to be really hard to find. Mahasiddhas are not walking around selling courses on the internet. You have to take what you can get. And I also find that a lot of students don't really go out and look. There's two things. They don't really get out and go for it and go looking around the world, right? Maybe they can't. Maybe they don't have enough money because they don't desire to work harder to make the money to go, or whatever the reason. But when someone says, I really can't find a teacher, and I'm so sincere, I usually think there's something they're not doing that could be doing that could change that, usually. The only person that's different than that has like 5 young children at home, ages 1 through 5. The spouse and they don't have enough skills, to produce a lot of income, and they're really stuck working like 2 jobs each. Okay, in that situation, it's going to be more difficult. But you pray like hell, and somebody's going to come around your neighborhood. You'll have a guru move next door or something. It's the power of your intention, and it's the power of the truth. Do you really want a teacher? Have you gone around the world looking for a teacher? Or are you just saying, I can't really find one, in my neighborhood? Well, no kidding. The Mahasiddhas didn't find them in the neighborhoods either. You had lineage holders of Mahasiddha Indian traditions that were from China. You had Chinese people that took over lineage holder positions in Tibet, and I mean far in China away from Tibet, not on the borders, of Dzogchen. You had Indian lineage holders in Chinese lineages that went over into China and became lineage holders there. So, people had to get outside of their ethnic, racial, national boundaries to find their teachers. And it wasn't like jumping on a plane back then, man. You got to think about this. So people really busted their nuts going out to find a teacher in the old days. And a lot of times I hear people not really putting out that kind of effort, A. And then the second thing is they show up with a list. And sure, I gave you a checklist, but what I'm talking about here, they're showing up with a list of how they perceive a teacher should act ahead of time. And that's, I think, this whole area that's been coming up on so many different threads I've seen on the internet the past 2 years about perfect behavior of a teacher is so difficult, because we have preconceived notions of how people should act. Now, again, I go into the only category or only way to test this is when a teacher is interacting with the student, right? When my teachers interacted with me, was their only thing they saw in me the potential enlightened being? Is that what all they saw? Or did they see that plus a person who might have needed, I don't know, some other kind of discussion, advice, or someone that they wanted to talk about the news of the outside world with as well, because they're living, in hermitages and monasteries. Fine, I'm okay with that. As long as always there was this, primarily the perception of the person who I can bring to enlightenment, the person who I can bring to liberation. So everything they were telling me or doing with me was in some way to create that experience. That's my only criteria. I don't care if the person just hollered at a student over there. I don't know that person's karma. I don't know whether they were hurt or not hurt. I don't know. None of us know. So sometimes I think there's a little bit too much of like asking for the perfect Christ-like figure. And I think that gets you in trouble. That gets you into cults, because unless they were a Swami Shivananda who had Christ-like behavior, it's so rare, that mythological kind of behavior. When someone's like that, I get very suspicious, because they're either a stage 9 being walking around just about to go 10 and die, or become immortal, or they could be pulling a fast one, using their stage craft, their acting to pull off the perfect, kind of facade. And that's where I like a person who's a little more down to earth, who, like both of my main masters were really, really down to earth people, besides being really far out meditation masters who died sitting up in high stage 9, didn't get to stage 10 while living because of, I think, the huge amount of responsibilities they willingly took on to help other beings. But dying in a high stage 9 is pretty high. So, I think we have to worry about this checklist. I'd be getting rid of the personality checklist. Go with the checklist I gave you. Whenever personality can match you, I gave as one of the principles. That's better than not. But I wouldn't let it stop you from learning from someone in the meantime. So that's what I have to say about that, Peter, and everybody else who's listening. Loosen up a little bit. Don't judge so much. And just don't, like, I had many, many teachers. I took initiation with only 2. from the Indian Tibetan side. I took one, two with Chinese as well, but from the Taoist side. But from the Dharma side, I only took initiation with two, and one after the other because I was told to, and by the first one. So I had many, many other teachers in between, and I was very devoted to them and did the practices they gave, and I really worked on the retreats I did with them and so on. But I did not take refuge. I did not take initiation. I did say, you're going to be my heart teacher, and you're going to be the one that I commit to. No. So you can consider it like that too. You don't have to be so hung up to only take teachings from your heart teacher, and you went a whole life waiting for a heart teacher that never came. That would be a waste of time. Okay.
Shivanandani has two questions. First part, what are the chances to get realized in the path if your life partner is not into the path?
What are the chances to get realized on the path in this lifetime if your life partner is not into the path?
Yeah.
That depends on you. That depends on you, and it depends on whether your partner is proactively making obstructions to your practice. I have seen over the 30-some years of teaching that when a person gets with somebody in a relationship, and this is not specifically to you, Shivanandani, this is in general, I have seen this. I'm telling you the truth, I've seen, you can work it out for yourself. A person gets into the practice really deep. The partner says, oh, I'll support you. I don't want to do it myself, but I'll support you. I've seen it be so rare that the partner actually supports. They eventually get like, oh, you're going to do that practice now? Why won't you stay up and watch TV with me? Oh, you're going to do that practice now? Oh, you don't want to go on vacation? You want to stay at home and practice because you have 7 days off? I want to go away and go to this casino in Morocco and Monaco. And I want to, so it's a big difference. And over time, I've seen the patience goes away, and with it, the support. And the person wants to have that relationship partner who's normal again in their life. And many times I think subconsciously or consciously, they were thinking that the person would grow out of it, that they would be done with that kind of a spiritual path sometime in their life. And, they're going to get over it or grow out of it or something like that. So I don't know. Ultimately, whether you get realized or not is on you, not on anybody else or the environment or anything. If your environment's not working for you, you change your environment. But we can't say that a partner can stop us from being realized. But we can say a partner can make it pretty darn hard, right? So that's our choice at that point. Yep.
This might be related to the series you're about to do, but she asks, how to maintain the normal life, worldly karmic obligations while going deep into spiritual practices?
Honestly, this is a category of question, and we had a few already today. How to maintain
Worldly normal life obligations.
Obligation, was the word obligation used? How to maintain worldly normal life obligations and have a spiritual life. And going deep in a spiritual practice. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have everything, kids. You got to kind of wake up and smell the roses. At some time, you got to focus. Take a world champion boxer. You want to be a world champion boxer? You got to make tons of sacrifices, or MMA fighter, any of these great sports people. Do you think that, the great swimmers were out having fun during the day and balancing it with their swim training? No, they weren't. They were just swimming. I looked at one of the training routines of one of the swimmers, eating 5 times a day, training 5 times a day. Whoa. 12-hour routine. That's it. Morning to night, 4 years to the Olympics. No fun. Occasionally, once a week, they have enough energy for an hour or two movie with a friend or their girlfriend or their wife. I was like, wow, that is intense training. And boxing, same thing. Or MMA, any kind of fighting. 12, 16-week training camp, isolated from the family, working your butt off really hard, So are you going to be able to go really deep? Because the question, Shivananda, you're asking, are you going to be able to go deep while maintaining all these worldly obligations? Well, no, plain and simple, if you're stacked up with worldly obligations. So first thing you want to do is get rid of every extraneous worldly obligation that isn't really essential. Now, when you're young, you don't want to do that. When you're young, or you're not really, well, you could be young and be fired up and do it, but most people won't want to do that, right? But you said go deep. So if you don't want to go deep, then don't do that. Just go along with it for 5 or 10 years. Practice once a day for 20 minutes. Open the mandala. Sit for 5 minutes of meditation. Close the mandala at night for 10 minutes. Light one more incense. Think about the day. Give love to all beings. Chant Shantipat. And go to sleep. Don't worry about it. It's really what you want. The question is self-answering, really. You want to go deep. You know you have to make changes. You want to go deep. You know you have to make sacrifices. But what are those sacrifices? That's up to you. Everybody has a different situation, what those sacrifices are going to be. This is not a spiritual question. This is a question of time and space. There's only enough time in a day to do so many things. What is it you want out of life? It's very simple.
Suka asks, when Rahu, Jupiter, and Sun are together, how do you sublime Rahuvic energy while keeping connected to the Dharma, Jupiter owning the ninth?
Astrology question. When Rahu, Jupiter, and Sun are all together in a house, and Jupiter is owning the ninth house, how do you transform the Rahuvian energy? The rule always with Rahu, forget about where Jupiter is and what it's doing. The rule always with Rahu is get away from Rahu. Go towards the second house where your Ketu is. So if your Rahu is in the 8th, your Ketu, the other half of the serpent, is in the second house. Classical knowledge, listening to teachings, studying the teachings. I mean, working it like a practice. If you see my spiritual books, they're underlined, crossed out, notes everywhere in the margins. Even if I'm never going to read it again, it doesn't matter. I write it to exercise my mind about the teaching in that moment. When Holiness gave me his sacred text off his shelf, which was Shardza's Kusum Rangshar text on Dzogchen, A to Z of Dzogchen, that he wanted me to learn and translate and teach from in the future. It was his own copy off his own altar. And he said, yeah, look, I'm giving you the copy with all my notes in it. And I had always been taught by my Tibetan lamas, like, never write in the book. They're sacred. You touch them on your head before you open up the silk to study from them. And here was my guru, the head of the entire Bumpo clan worldwide, millions of practitioners and lay people, writing all over it in it with different colored pencils and everything to mean different things, to trigger his mind, to see different things about the teaching. I was blown away. So it is a practice and can be a practice where Ketu is in the second house, chanting, study, reading. I think that's really important to do, to move away from this getting lost in the esoterics, getting confused about the mystical and getting all whacked out around the esoterics and the mystical, especially when it owns the ninth house of the path. This is the general advice for everybody, to move away from the ensnarement of their Rahu, which is a planet, if you're not familiar with this, that signifies deep, deep compulsive patterns of behavior that led to our incarnation over and over and over again into samsara, or suffering. Really symbolizes the deepest unconscious patterns. We need to escape out of those patterns, right? Now, feeling spiritually special will be one of those patterns with a Jupiter-Rahu-Sun combination in the 8th house. Having spiritual experiences back that up and prove it and support it to your ego structure will be another danger of being in the 8th house with that situation you have. I hope I'm not sharing too much out in public here, but you did write in that question. So you have to be super humble, super modest, and work really hard. Second house has with it also the sense of working really hard and having it integrated in your daily life, and landing in the second house also has to do with family. So working family in that way to open up the reality of family and what it has to teach you by being a good family person, a good contributor to your family as well. As you know, I have the same Rahu in the 8th as you do, but instead of the sun, I have the moon. And so I have the Ketu in the second like you. So I took that advice myself and went deeply into the practice side of using the teachings, the practice of studying the teachings very deeply as well. So this is what I recommend. Okay.
Crystal asks, is there any merit in sincerity and continued tries even when we slide back? Or is it like we never started?
Oh, Crystal and everybody else, ain't nothing to it but to do it. As Frederick Roddy III said to me in 1980, this manager from Georgia of the kitchen I worked in to try to make enough money to make it through university. I went in that kitchen and I had one of these questions. I'm just going to give up. This pre-med is driving me crazy. I'm going to throw my books in the garbage, just go work in my stepfather's construction company and just be done with it. All my friends are buying houses already. Here I am in college in sophomore, second year of college. All my friends have 2 houses already who are doing normal jobs like construction, plumbing, electricity. What am I, stupid? I want to be a doctor. It's stupid. And he said, what's your problem? What's your problem, Patrick? And I said, well, my problem is I just can't get this thing through my head. I'm studying my brains out and it's not going in. Some subject I was stuck on at the time. I had pre-med, all the science classes, very hard ones actually. And he said, well, listen to me, youngin'. He's calling me youngin'. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Like that. He was this really cool old black man from the South in America. And he loved me and we had a great relationship. And his Shakti of love just pierced my animal realm cloud of self-neglect that was slipping towards demon realm of self-hatred and woe is me, ghost realm, the lower 3 realms, lower 3 chakras, cut right through it. And it was the clarity of the wake-up call. And I was like, wow, you're right. No matter what I think, the only thing to do, ain't nothing to it but to do it. The only thing to do is to get off my butt and do something about it. Because I'm not learning anything by complaining about it, by wallowing in myself, in the misery of my self situation. And I fired it up and I got in there and I got going. And that year I had a 4.0, which was really cool. That was the highest you could get back then in university, straight marks, perfect marks. And I owe a lot of that to Freddie. He fired me up. I would have, slipped. And the same thing happened to me again in chiropractic college. And someone did the same thing, kicked me in the butt in a lovely way and fired me up and saved my butt in school so I didn't get thrown out again from when I was feeling the misery of failure at one point. So here's the thing. Is there a merit in brushing it off and starting over again? Absolutely. That's why every good preliminary or foundation practice from every non-dual Dharma tradition I know of has a way for you to confess your transgressions against your fellow humans, against your teacher, against the teachings, against the tradition in the morning practice, receive the blessing of forgiveness, take the reinitiation again, and start over again. And that's why. So you can start fresh every single moment and let go of that karma and work off the negative effects of it. Now we got to take responsibility for it. We got to work off the negative effects, but there's nothing else to do. There's no other game in town. You face it now or you face it later. This is why I don't judge people for suicide in the bad way, but I certainly don't understand it at all because you do not improve your circumstances by suiciding whatsoever. And you make it worse, you make it worse actually, because that motive that would have you even take your life out where you can't contribute to others into a worse situation. So it's completely irrational, illogical. You end up in a worse situation. So anytime you're confronted with a sense of failure and you want to start again, just remember, only your human fragility can fail, can make mistakes. Your essence nature is never affected. You can dust off at any time, no matter how bad you felt, no matter what kind of heinous crime you did. And you can recognize your nature through practice and be a realized being. And this is why also I want us to give a break to teachers that might have fallen. Where is our compassion? My God, compassion is supposed to be a hallmark of enlightenment, a hallmark of the path, something we're supposed to be cultivating all the time. And yet a teacher makes a mistake. They've helped thousands and thousands of beings and no compassion. I mean, I do think teachers that do terrible things like hit students or rape them, or these are like, it's not unforgivable. It has to be forgiven, but they have to be taken out of that position where they themselves can go into retreat, recognize their faults, make amends, make reparations to the people they've harmed. I think that would be really good to do. But we should never forget that those teachers that fell terribly through those kind of crimes, those are crimes. They should go to jail, I think, actually. Those teachers who do those kind of things and those teachers who just do minor faults, and we ourselves as practitioners who like chastise our child out of anger for a moment. We lose our sense of present moment and we chastise out of anger. Or you steal something, you're in the shopping mall and you're like eating a bunch of mangoes for free, knowing that you're getting a free meal. Things that aren't like life or death, but are not good. Whatever it is, you got to forgive yourself. You got to forgive yourself. You have to be able to have some way to confess, some way to sense your rectification with your own essence, because your essence is never able to be destroyed, never able to be truly covered up. It's only our ignorance that it can be covered up. So if we don't forgive others, if we don't forgive ourselves, we're separating from our own essence. We're going against the view itself. If we don't forgive others who make mistakes, others who do terrible crimes, if we don't have compassion for them, we're in the hell realm. No, you're not in the logic and reason realm. You're in the hell realm. Like President Trump. If I was in charge of the judicial system in America, I'd have his butt in jail in 2 seconds. He's broken numbers of laws. He's a terrible person, right? But I wouldn't lose my compassion for him as an entity, a sentient being that has the base, the uprising of wisdom and compassion within his potentiality. Never. You can't lose that compassion for anybody. There are many people in my life, because of my astrological configuration, who like to attack me in my life. I love them all. And I don't love them all from some flippant place. And I would defend myself if I could, whenever I can. But it doesn't mean that I've lost any sense of compassion or forgiveness for them, you know? And it's not because I'm a Christian. It's because I'm a human being. And this path is the path of becoming a real human being, a good human being. I saw a few times, there's some journalist, I'll leave his name out of it. He's a very big crusader for destroying cults and getting all the cult leaders in jail and executed. And he wants all their books to be boycotted, all their products, all their courses, you know, if they're alive or dead. And he goes on campaigns to try to get this to happen. And it's clear to me that he has pretty much unprocessed stuff within himself. He must have been done over in some kind of cult and he just never got over it. So if you were done over in some kind of cult and you never got over it, now's the time. Forgive yourself for making the choice of going into it. Have compassion on yourself. You didn't know any better, or you didn't have the strength to leave, even when you found out better. Sometimes you know, but you won't leave. It's okay. It's over now. Forgive the teacher, the person, the cult leader, for being a bad person. Have compassion for them. If they go to jail and get their just desserts, good for them. Everybody should get what they deserve. But forgive and have compassion. Rectify yourself to your true nature. This is the most important thing. Okay, and we're good. Let's chant Om Shanti 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 Hi and see you on the next round. Imagine sitting in the center of the refuge mandala with all the beings in the universe all around you. Dharma hero, Dharma heroine mandala. See all beings in the universe around you transform from samsaric beings into nirvanic beings in one moment. Boom, in an instant. See them all smiling, chanting along with you, Om Shanti 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 Hi, and all the 6 realms are suffused with the rainbow-colored lights and everyone's liberated for all times to come. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Blessings and long life to our wisdom masters. May they continue to benefit beings in all times and spaces. May they continue to guide us and protect us on the path. And may we reach full fruition, full realization. And may this be for the benefit of all beings. Tatastu, may it be so. Okay, bye-bye.